Hey, everybody, I'm Erik Hansel, and I am so excited to share my latest episode with you. I sat down with Brendan Hansen, a 6 time Olympic medalist, 3 time captain of the U.S. men's Olympic swim team, set many world records in his career, went undefeated in his events in college, medaled in 14 of his 15 years as a professional swimmer, is in the U.S. Swimming Hall of Fame. I mean, I could go on and on about his accolades, but I am telling you, his story is not about the accolades. It is about the perseverance and resilience that he had through setback and hard time. And if you are feeling like you need some motivation and inspiration, I promise you this is going to be the best podcast episode you listen to in a long time. Just to give an example of one heartbreak that then turned into a great story of resilience in his career, in 2000, as a high school senior, he narrowly missed making the Olympic team. And when I say narrowly, I mean he literally missed making the Olympic swim team by 2/100ths of a second. To then a year later, not only does he win world championships, but he breaks a new world record in the process. And that's just one story of heartbreak into resilience. I could go on and on about others. He talks about being on the Michael Phelps relay in 2008 for his 8th gold medal. He talks also about standing up on the block in his own event and just thinking, I'm burned out and I don't want to be here. And that's probably something we can all sort of relate to in terms of burnout. Not sure about the gold medal stage, but you really have to listen to the end when he talks about his unbelievable comeback into swimming in 2012. It's a story that I was not aware of. I learned a ton about it. And if you're looking for some motivation and inspiration, I promise you there's no better person to listen to than Brendan Hansen. So please give this a like, give this a share. I'm excited to share this conversation with you. And now, here's Brendan. Brendan Hansen, thank you so much for
What's
making the
up?
time to chat today, man.
Heck yeah, man. Blast from the past. It's been a long
Blast
time,
from the
Eric.
past. It's been a long time. It's good to catch up.
Yeah, you've grown
Um,
up nicely, man. You feel like
I
you
actually
got a
have a beard
nice,
now. Exactly.
yeah, yeah, you got it. You got a little bit going there, man. Nice.
Well, I appreciate you making the time. This podcast, I wanted to focus on, career challenge, setback, resilience, because I think that your story as an Olympian, as a world record holder, as a gold medalist, is one of the most amazing stories, really, in American sports history in terms of resilience. And so I thought we could dig in there today. And since we grew up in the same neighborhood, if you will, I know your story back from the 90s. And so I'd actually like to start in the 90s, 2000. Um, the thing that I think put you sort of on the stage or on the map in the swimming world back then was those 2000 Olympic trials, where, if I'm not mistaken, you came in third twice, which is to say, just missed the team as an 18-year-old for the Olympic team.
Yeah. 2000 was my senior year of high school. A lot of things going on in your life your senior year. You're graduating, you kind of figuring out who you are, you're figuring out where you're going to school next, all of those things. And I was lining a lot of that out, but there was a substantial bubble in my life that revolved around this push and drive to make the Olympic team.
Yeah.
Sydney, Australia. I had never been out of the country before, really wanted to take the chance. And so, you fast forward what you're talking about, the event, the actual trials and finishing that way. I pushed that back like almost 10 months. I sat down in my coach's office and said, hey, what do I need to do? Like, looking at the list of things, the requirements and responsibilities as a senior in high school. And then, like, what are the things I'm going to have to give up? Like, let's just be
Yeah.
honest. Let's call it what it is, and start making those sacrifices now, right? And I felt like we had a really good plan. My coach was really, he was well versed in this run, what I would say, this really a training run to go to trials. He'd been there before with a young athlete before, back in '92 and in '88 with Grace Cornelius. And so I was like, all right, let's do this. And so we kind of made all those adjustments going into those. And honestly, man, I think what hurt the most of that whole push is that, like, looking back on it from that, like, I would say late summer of '99 to like going into Indianapolis in 2000, and being in those Olympic trials, was like there was no stone unturned. I had done
Yeah.
everything that was asked of me. Like, I had taken care of myself, went to bed early, didn't stay up late, didn't make stupid mistakes. And this is an 18-year-old kid that, if you ask my mom and dad, was really good at all of those things, like
Yeah.
staying up late, not eating healthy, and making bad decisions. And so I felt like I had really, in the process, like turned a page in my maturity of making this run. And then to get smacked in the face, which is what I would call it, in front of, like, it wasn't in front of like a group of guys playing pickup basketball at the YMCA. This is 7,000 people in Indianapolis, and I get third in the 100 breast by 2/100ths of a second, right?
Right.
And it's just I try to explain to people because they're always like, "What did you think about when that moment you're warming down? Like, where you at?" And I'm like, "I didn't process anything, man. I was
Yeah.
just like, you at that moment, you can't, you have to separate yourself from what had just happened and focus on what's coming up next." 2 days later, I swim the 200 breaststroke final, which is 2 laps longer. Figure out, okay, they can make the adjustments we needed to. Still uber focused on trying to achieve the goal. Same thing happens. And at this point, I'm like, man, I couldn't, I couldn't catch a fish in a barrel if I tried. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think the best advice that I think the best advice I got in that moment is don't try to make sense of it. We try to digest everything in the moment, and we're like, oh, we're gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna change it. I don't think I really got a grasp of what happened to me in that moment till like 12 years later, and I'm sure we'll get to those
Wow.
moments. That was the first big, you know, all through high school, I never really lost a lot of races. I was really successful. I was in the paper. I was super excited. I was on a fast track. Like everything was going really, really well for me. And I was really a favorite to come in and then to do everything my coach said to me to do and then get up in front of that race and then I just literally got knocked on my butt. Like,
Yeah.
and not once, but twice, right?
Yeah.
We talk about it, my dad and I talk about it all the time, but I just remember sitting down in the aisle of like the Kroger's grocery store and just being like, I don't really want to move. And he was like, get up. He's like, I don't care about you as a swimmer. He's like, you're not going to sit on a grocery store floor and not do anything. And I think that was like the first real step in me healing from it all, but then also really making me the person that I was, which was super, super sick.
That's amazing to hear because it really seemed like a choosing moment, right? Like a lot of people, and you wouldn't blame them, would go that other way of laying in the grocery store. That was the peak of their athletic career. You come back and you have freshman year at Texas. You have world championships in 2001. You set the world record in 2001 in the 200-meter breaststroke, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about what it felt like then to come back, going into that meet, knowing what's at stake, qualifying for the national team, breaking that world record in that meet. And did you feel like that was retribution for 2000, or what was going through your mind then once you had some success after that really tough setback?
Dude, you're bringing back all the feels. Yeah, like it's hard because I think like growing up in Philadelphia and just like that blue collar aspect, like I followed the Phillies, the Flyers, the Eagles, right? I'm like, so I was used to like failure,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, and I
Yeah.
say that with all, I mean, so in sport in general, I knew the roller coaster that it was, even though I was on this really high trajectory to get to where I was being a senior in high school and almost making the Olympic team, which now it's really, really hard to do. But like, I was aware of it watching the Phillies and the Flyers and the Eagles, like pro teams in
Sure.
Philadelphia. At that moment, man, it was like you rely on the people around you to get to where you want to go, and you really find out who your true friends are.
Mm.
And honestly, like when you're like there was a Y on the road and you seem to take this road, I didn't really see a Y. I only saw one way. Like at this moment, I was like, okay, this is gonna define me. But I was like, I don't know what was maybe me hanging out with my brother who was 3 years older than me and hanging out with all of his buddies growing up to where I had to live up to the standard of a bunch of boys that were, my Sandlot crew was always
Yeah.
3 years older than me. And so like I was getting my ass handed to me my whole life, right?
Right.
Like trying to stay up and keep up. And then now in this situation, like I don't know. I didn't see a why, Eric. I just saw like, okay, that's the marker, that's the moment. It can either define me or it's gonna really define me. And listen, at that moment, I still remember pissing off half of the UT roster when I walked into the locker room and took that white athletic tape. It's like an inch wide, and I just took it and wrote "Man on a Mission." We had these fancy lockers with our last names, and all the freshmen were super pumped. And I was like, I don't care about my last name. Like, I just put "Man on a Mission," put it over my last name, and all these guys were like, okay, we get that you're like this really top end recruit and awesome breaststroker, but what are you doing? Like, you're not. They thought it was like a big ploy to me against them.
Yeah.
When I think within about a month, they realized it was me against me,
Yeah.
and then they were just like, okay, we got to get on this guy's because he's on another level. And then to your point, like I was once I got there at the University of Texas is where I realized that if you want the results you want, you better start behaving the way you want to be. Like, I realized that I had to start behaving like a world record holder and start behaving like a world champion if I wanted to get there. And it was really nice to be at the University of Texas where I was swimming with 9 and 10 of them a day,
Yeah.
right? It was like, you want to play your best round of miniature golf, go play with a PGA Tour golfer, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna make it through the windmill, right? Like, you're gonna be good. Like, and so I feel like that's I was really blessed to go to a high-end university with a really high-end coach that, I mean, honestly was a great landing zone for me. And to your point, took my 2000 blip in my career to like a 2001 career that, I mean, a lot of people would just alone would have loved 1 year of something like that.
Totally. I mean, look, one of the things that comes to mind from obviously having swam under your brother and then obviously watched you grow as a swimmer and cheer for you at these meets and whatnot, you might be the person who leads by example, who most leads by example, right? So man on a mission, keeping yourself to that standard. And it's something that I saw from you, I saw from your older brother, Sean. Um, Talk to me about the sacrifices that are required to do that. Why is that your leadership style? Is that just what comes naturally to you? I'm so drawn to that because I think that to me, you're just the most emblematic person who does leadership by example. And you can see it play out. You became captain of the Texas swim team, captain of the US Olympic swim team. Why do you think you respond to adversity in that way?
I always felt like it was the most authentic way to be a leader. You can be loud and you can get up on a stool and give your Lombardi speech and all of that. But usually most guys that do that in the locker room have the credentials to back it up. But at the same time, sometimes those words don't hit the way you think they are as a leader. And I just always felt like the easiest and most effective and authentic, organic way to be a leader was by example. And I just feel like
Yeah.
you can't, because it's the way I always see, like when you're trying to motivate a group of people, like I was on those teams where I was a captain, you're trying to get them to believe in the culture. You're trying to get them to understand where you're going and where you want the team to go. And honestly, the reason you want that culture and you want to create that is because at some moment, somebody's going to pop off and do a great time and you want the team to react positively, or something's going to happen negatively in the sport and you want them to react positively, right? And
Yeah.
so that's where your culture is tested when you go to like an Olympic Games or you go to a World Championships. And so for me, I just instilled that. I always found that, like, if we behaved a certain way, the results were going to be there. And so I would always ask questions to these coaches or athletes that were, people I looked up to, and I would just say, like, okay, um, like, I would ask like Olympic gold medalist. I would ask the world record holder. I would ask Lance Armstrong and be like, hey, like, what are some characteristics of you as a person? Like, what are some things that you do that you behave like this way? Because I always felt like I could always tie back the results to behaviors, and then I was like, that's a
Mm.
controllable. The results wasn't a controllable. I couldn't control what the 7 other guys I was going to do racing against, but I could control my behavior the 6 to 8 months leading up to that event to give me the best odds to win. And I think having the odds not in my favor in 2000 allowed me to really focus on, like, man, if it's a game of inches or hundredths of a second, then I better be doing something every single day that like puts money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
So that I
Yeah.
can eat fast. Yeah.
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 From 2000 to 2004, then you have probably the most illustrious collegiate swimming career of all time. You win the 200-meter breaststroke every year. You win the 100-meter breaststroke every year. Texas wins multiple national championships. I mean, it's hard to even. I don't know anyone's career who comes close to that. 2004 comes, you have unfinished business, right? Because you still haven't qualified for the Olympic team, right? So you come in to trials, you make the team, you're elated, and then you have another setback at the Olympic Games.
Yeah. And listen, I think the lead up, like, for me, what I valued and what I wanted at that point from 2004, it was more of a, okay, you're building your legacy. You're
Yeah.
here. Like, what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? And I knew I wanted to leave the University of Texas different than when I got there. My dad always told me that growing up. He's like, if you show up in a room and you leave it, it better be a different room because you were in there. Like that was the mindset he always told me when I would act up in class or not get good grades or do something stupid at practice, right? Again, like I don't want to sit here and I'll say that I was like the end all be all best student or best athlete or whatever. I definitely had my moments, right? And so I think those opportunities like were from 2004. I'm like what inspired me the most to be successful was to be good, but then like to just bury people and not let them know that they were ever going to be as good. And like just I was just like I was and again, man, I was like I was intrigued by consistency. I
Yeah.
wanted to continue to be better and get there. And then when I got to '04 trials, a lot of the emotions and responses, even though I saw multiple major events leading up to those, I still went right back to the last Olympic trials. So, like we could sit here all day and say that events are events and they're all different and the pool's still the same length. But in 2000, you go to Olympic trials is just a totally different vibe. I mean, it is time does not matter. Everything is festival first and punch your ticket to the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
I have a killer meet at those trials, break the world record in both of them. And to your
Right.
point, now I'm the favorite going in into those Olympic Games. And honestly, I made just a couple small mistakes in training camp that I think, looking back, I wouldn't have changed them. But in the same token, like I think it was I took ownership and accountability for him. I think we trained too hard. I think we went back to the patrolling board, and I was surrounded by alpha males in the Olympic training camp, which I'd never done before. Right now, I'm racing Phelps and Lochte and Pearsall and Crocker, all these guys that have all been there before, and I'm like, I'm not letting anybody win workout.
Yeah.
Like and that was our mentality. It was just like we would just go into, and coaches are telling us to slow down and work out the training camp. And so I think I put myself in a little bit of a hole, and the lack of experience at Olympic Games came out, and I just wasn't super sharp going into '04. But you know, had I been, I think it would have been really successful. But we fast forward to the end of this deal. I don't regret any moment of
Sure.
anything I did, man. And I think it was '04 was really important and pivotal moment in my career, coming home from Athens with a gold, a silver, and a bronze.
I agree with you. One of the things I'm hearing though is there's a tremendous amount of accountability, but what's going through my head as a swimming fan, as a huge fan of yours, is look, part of that '04 Olympics was the Kosuke Kitajima. For those that don't know, I call him Cheetahjima. Most of the swimming world does
Sure.
too. He
Yeah.
makes an illegal turn, and you lose by hundredths of a second. You get a silver medal to him,
Silver. Yeah.
and and look, again, you have a Y in the road, and I know you only see one path, but like no one would have blamed you in that moment to say, shit, I just feel cursed, right? Like I missed out on 2000, I get cheated in 2004, and you just say, there's no path but the one forward. I'm keeping on going.
Yeah, I that's I think where I realized that like life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I think at that moment I could have easily been like, for me, this is the
Yeah.
situation. But at the same time, I was like, I'll be fully honest, man. I was like, and I don't think I told a lot of people this. I was like, if that dude has to cheat to beat me, how badass am I right now? Like that was my mentality. It wasn't like that's crap. Why did he do that? I was
Yeah.
just like, that guy was willing to cheat on the biggest stage in the biggest situation ever, with the chance of like, Japanese, like the Japan, like Michael Phelps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for him to do that and know that he had to do that to beat me, I was just like, hey man, I don't need a gold medal. I just need to know that that's what you had to do to get yours, and that's ridiculous, and you're gonna regret that. Any, we you can fast forward to the end of the career of that one, but that moment, I think the way I kept my warrior mentality, and to your point, like my armor on and kept fighting, was I was like, dude, if you have to cheat to beat me, then that's how good I am.
Yeah.
Like that's where you, as an athlete at the 1%, and you have to live on that line of confidence and cocky.
Mm. You told me before we started recording that your teammates also put a Japanese flag up to motivate you every day on the barbell to just push harder and keep going. That happened after '04. You then come back and win World Championships 2005 Montreal, win World Championships 2006, trade off, I think, on gold medals in '07, and here comes '08. and you're back on the Olympic team. What's going through your mind entering those '08 Olympic teams? I'd imagine it's got to be, I want retribution, I want gold. But tell me, what's your mind state going in after those, trading back and forth gold medals over the course of 4 years?
Yeah, we're following a timeline right now. So you come out of high school. Obviously, 2000 happens the way it does. '04 happens the way it does. And I think '05 to '08 is really where I learned like work-life balance and
Uh,
not the right way. It's really important people understand that. Like, I was a, I mean, I thought in of one and two when I wrote "Man on a Mission" on a white piece of paper and put it on the wall, like I thought that was like a little bit crazy. I went off the rocker in '05 and '06 and just went full bore into crushing it and went as hard as I possibly could. And I think that's what attributed to the world records in '06 that I was just like, I'm gonna bury any doubt in my mind that I was the greatest in the world at that moment, and it wasn't healthy at all.
mm, mm,
I don't think my preparation I mean, there was a saying that I would say in '06, which was like, the separation was in the preparation. Like I was literally going to separate myself from the field by being the most prepared. And like I say that in an unhealthy way, like I didn't have much of a social life. I didn't have a lot going for me outside of sport. I wasn't getting endorsement deals because I wouldn't do them. Like
mm.
I wasn't signed up for stuff. I was solely set on just touching the wall first and like infatuated with it. And to your point now, I go into '08 and those Olympic Games. I've got those 4 years of just like what I would say is like the pendulum has swung all the way to the right. And you're saying like, man, for you to swim fast, you're gonna have to be somewhere in the middle. I was not in '08, and now I'm staring at the water. I still remember this day. So I was in lane two for the final of the 100 breast, and I was looking down 50 meters of water, and the first thought in my head going into the final of the 100 breast, and I was just like, am I really still doing this? Like, is this all I had to show for myself? Never, ever, Eric, did I ever have that thought, ever, until that moment. And then I was
Wow.
like, wow, crap. This is probably not the place to hang that moment. Like, have that thought. But when I see it now, I finished fourth out of the medals. Um, and at that moment, I knew, I think I knew at that moment at that moment the realization of the pendulum being so far to the right and I was off balance really came and smacked me in the face. And then honestly, like at that moment, I doubled down on as a leader as a team. I helped navigate a lot of the team members win medals, and then
Yeah.
obviously was on that memorable eighth gold medal of Phelps's run in Beijing and came home. I still came home with a medal, right? Like it was
Yeah.
awesome. But I think at that moment I came home with a plan of, to your point where you're like you were so driven, like you just kept going, like that. There was, I think at this moment I was like, okay, I need to get my life in check. Like there may be a hot moment after Beijing where I was like, I need to figure out who I am.
So this is fascinating. You said a lot of stuff I want to dig in on. I have a sense, but don't actually know. When you say hard work, here's what I'm thinking. You're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, swimming at practice probably from 6 to 8. You're watching what you eat 365 days a year. I bet you swim 7 days a week. You're probably in the pool 4 or 5 hours a day. When you're not in the pool, you're either lifting or resting. I mean, is that accurate? Like, talk to me about the actual, because I see you and I know, having swam with you, the work ethic is insane. But what actually was it? Was it that intense?
Yeah, I think the outside looking in, it looks insane.
Yeah.
But I do want, and so everything I'm about to say, just like understand that in the moment while you're doing it, it's just the reality of what you have to do. And I built myself up to get there. But on average, it was 2 hours in the morning. I'd come home, I eat 2 to 3,000 calories. I would go to bed, take a nap, wake up, go to the gym, the weight room. I'd be in there for an hour and a half. I'd go back to work out in the pool from 3 to 5, go home. I would eat, spend a little bit of time with my friends or family, and then I would go to bed, trying to get close to 9 hours of sleep, if not 10, so I could recover. And so, like, if I wasn't working out, I was sleeping. If I wasn't sleeping, I was eating.
Yeah.
And so I think, there's just not a lot of character building in those moments, right? And there's only so many times that you can just stay. Like, I feel like the best analogy I can give you is like, I just never got off the battlefield.
Yeah.
right? Like I never got a chance to regroup and like be like, okay, what's the strategy? You know, for
Yeah.
like 5 years, I was literally just at war
Yeah.
with myself and where I wanted to go. And so a lot of that preparation, like again, my saying was like there was separation in that. Like I was like, the like early in my career, it was like I'm more talented than you. Like in my mind, I was like, I'm more talented than you. I'm gonna wreck you.
Yeah.
But I was talking against '04. I was like, I got the experience. I know everything. I've been there, done that. I got you. By '08, I was like, nobody on this planet has done what I did to get on these blocks. So these guys next to me aren't even close to as prepared as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that's the three mindsets that I had. It was like young, pissed off for greatness, talent, I'm good. People tell me I'm good. Blah, what happens? Get my butt handed to me. '04, I'm like, I've been there, done that. The knife's sharp. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna throw down. '08, I'm like, it was all preparation, but in the process, I got out of balance and it took me a while to get back, man.
I'd love then to
I'd
talk
love them to
about, because
talk
I know
about
after the '08 Olympics, you take 2 years off. You're off '09 and 10. What did you focus on? Like, how did you self reflect? How did you kind of just get back to being you and finding that balance?
I didn't force anything. I think I try to find where I was the happiest and where I was like what I felt like I was missing, right? Like I immediately went home and was like, okay, fill the buckets that you say you don't ever pay attention to, which was
Mm.
like community, friends, in involvement and like engagement and impact. And so honestly, I got a job. I started to work inside the community. I started doing triathlon. So I had a group of people that were outside of swimming that I could like identify with and like race and have fun and enjoy myself and like kind of just I would say just like drop a few tears on like the intensity, but still have be fun athletically. I mean, I lived in a city that I'd been in since 2000 for 8 years. And there's like parts of the city I'd never been to or people I've gotten hung out with or, you know. And so I took advantage of all the doors that had opened that I never did because of my run in swimming, right?
Yeah.
Doing things with the governor, engaging with the school district, getting involved with the university. Like there was just a lot of things I was like, no, no, training, sleeping, eating, no, training, sleeping, eating. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm walking through that door.
Yeah.
I am going to go to that event. I am going to raise a crap load of money for this cause. Like those are the things I did in 9 and 8 to really like, I would say like bring color back into me. Like I
Yeah.
felt like I was very black and white. You know what you were going to get when Brendan Hansen would walk in the room. And I just wanted like, I wanted to like actually be seen for who I was.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, a lot of identity stuff for sure.
And look, to fast forward then, you come back. What makes you come back in 2011?
I think you know it's funny because you asked me to come on here and talk a little bit about my journey and like how it's so intriguing to you to talk about like how people I'm equally as intrigued. So like while I'm sitting here telling you my story, I could also tell you a handful of other people that their stories the same way. Where I think I had to go there in '08 to get there in '11.
Huh.
And the reason I say that is like I think if you ask like very successful business people, they're like, you can't hang. And they're like, how do you know I can't hang? And they're like, because at some point you're gonna realize your life is not balanced. Like things are not right. And I'm not saying that everybody has to go there, but I'm saying like it's the common denominator in a lot of these like crazy outlandish situations where you're like, man, I want to be this great 1%er. I'm telling you, at some point you're gonna be like, whoo, probably need to take a step back for a second. This is a little bit off the rocker.
Yeah.
And not balanced. And like I think 9 and 10 by 11, I just I got married in 2010. Obviously, you're thinking, well, some family soon. And I think my realization was like, I don't want to tell my kids. The story that I don't want to tell my kids is that I found myself in '09 and 10 and I got involved in the community and that was the end of my student career. And like, I was just not okay with that being the last chapter of my book that I would tell my kids someday. And so in 2011, I'm vacuuming the floor in front of my wife, and the NBC commercial comes on, and I'm on it, and I'm there with Phelps and everybody else, and we're screaming. And I look at my wife, and she's like, "Just call Eddie Reese. Go back to like she didn't even like some moment there. She just and one moment that, and this is where, like, honestly, if I was to ever write a book or ever really tell a story, I feel like this is the moment, like, where shit got
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, because you would think everything we've talked about up to this point, I get like the community swimming, the people that supported me in my career up to OA would have open arms and be like, come in, we'd love for you to be here. Like, we're so excited you're back, Brennan.
Because you're
That was
captain.
the
You were two-time captain of the U.S. Olympic swim team.
3 time.
Three-time. Well,
Yeah.
you're including 12. But I'm
Yes.
saying like
Well, 12
coming
at this
coming in,
point. Yes. Yes. At
yeah,
this
coming
point.
in, like you would think that they're like open arms.
No, no. I mean, even I showed up to practice on Monday morning, and Eddie Reese was just like, dude, you're not coming back. He's like, I got 4 breaststrokers in the water right now that can beat you. And I was like, I didn't ask you if I was the fastest guy here. I just asked him, what lane do you want me to get into? Like,
I love that.
yeah.
I
And
love that.
so then I did dabble back into some behaviors that I would say, like, at this moment, at this moment, I felt like I was just like, I don't know what the word is, but like, just people were like, "Oh, it's just doing this for show. He's gonna want to try and steal some sponsorship money from somebody else." And I just immediately went back to what you said, which was lead by example. So like,
Yeah.
when these younger guys started like easing up in practice, I'd chipper and get at them. I'd throw a kickboard, I'd throw their, I would just get rowdy. And I was
Yeah.
like, "You guys think this is for fun?" Like, and I'll tell you, like, at that moment, it never, like, at that moment at 11 and 12, it didn't feel like a job. Everything I did in that was like, my perspective was so clear that I just felt like everything was a blessing and an opportunity and a great moment. And so I just tried to live in the present and just enjoy, where the guys would be like, man, the water's cold. I'm like, yeah, isn't it cold? Like, I was just like weird like that in the 11 and 12 time frame. But I tell you, like, it was not, it was the hardest from a support standpoint, where I definitely had moments where I come home and I was just like, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that thinks he can do this. And that's why I tell people all the time when they talk about wanting to go do something, like, man, I'm about to tell you something and it's super crazy. And I say to them, I go, you're the first person that has to believe you can do it before anybody else. Because if you are relying on somebody else to tell you that you can grow this company, or you can build this product, or you can grow a great podcast, or you can go be a leader of a country, or whatever it is, you're never going to do it. And that's where 95, the 1%ers, the 99%ers of the world are waiting for somebody else to give them permission to do it. And in 11 is the first moment that I realized it, because I was like, nobody wants me to do this.
Mm.
And then you go back and watch the interview of the 2012 Olympic Games. It's the first time in my life I ever gave myself credit for doing something.
Wow. Wow. I remember you were kind of like the old guy in 12, right? It was like
Yes,
he's the vet. Yeah,
31.
31, like kind of a little over the hill talk. Like, no way he makes this team. You make the team. And not only that, in the Olympic Games, you're outside smoke. You're lane 8 in that gold medal, or in that final, right? Talk to me then, because to me, that's the storybook ending here, is that you qualify for finals. You're an outsider in the finals because you're in lane 8, and it's your last professional race. What's going through your mind in that moment?
I tried to find like I always try to find a story, right? Like, you saw it from my brother. Him and I are always like that. We're always trying to find the way to motivate a team and get them there. I don't know why we have that innately in our body. Like, but my brother does very similar behaviors that I do. And so I was the team captain of the team. Second night of finals, we just won a couple medals in the 400 won the first night. Second night, I'm the first final of the night. I'm the first opportunity for our team to win Olympic medal. And so I squeak into the final, and the guys are seeing me like literally hobble around the village. Like, every night, every time I swam, my knee would blow up the next morning, and I would have like 11 cc's of fluid removed from my knee. Like, when you say I'm over the hill, there is the aspect of the age, but then I also have my guys like watching me have the doctor come in, work on me. Like, I'm either living in PT or I'm in the warm down pool. Like, it's just my body was not keeping up with my mind and my spirit at that moment. But I walked into the room and I asked one of our data analytic guys. I was like, "Hey, has anyone ever medaled from the United States out of lane 8?" And he was like, "No." And at that moment, it was like, when like a camera goes from like fuzzy to like fully focused. That was my approach. At that moment, I was just like, everything became super clear, and I was like, I got it. I know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm going to do.
You know
I
the
walk
story.
into this. Yeah, I walked into the team room and I said, guys, listen, I'm in lane 8 tonight. I'm the first event of the night. I said, I can't promise you what the 7 other guys are going to do. And you know that. If you're here, you know that. I was like, but I'm going up to the blocks knowing that the last name that they're going to hear before they take their mark is mine because I'm announced last. And I'm going to use that to my advantage, knowing that I'm already in their head because they're going to hear Brendan Hansen from the United States of America. That's the last thing they hear before the gun goes off. And I said, all I can promise you is that they're going to remember racing me tonight. That's all I can tell you. And then to fast forward, I win the bronze medal, beat Kosuke Kitajima, who's in lane 7. This is like a crazy moment, right?
Yeah.
And I say to you, I'm like, the coolest part about this story is that we had 6 more opportunities to win Olympic medals, and we won gold in every one of them.
Hell yeah.
And so, like, that's where I realized, one, if you want to do something, you have to believe you can do it before anybody else, or it's not going to happen. You fast forward, I go all the way back to 2011 when I walked on the pool deck and told Eddie I wanted to do it, and the one guy that should say, yeah, hell yeah, let's do this, was like, no, you're an idiot. I was like, okay. And then lastly, like, you have to realize that your actions can change an entire group of people in the way, in their mindset and how they move forward. And like the crowd went nuts, the guys went nuts, and then we won. We heard our national anthem 6 more times that night, and it's never been done since. And to your point, like, the reason I love telling this story, Eric, and why I think it's so important is because I value every single moment of it all the way through. I value getting my butt handed to me in 2000. I value, the wins and the losses, and like to tell my kids now that it's not all just the medals and the ribbons and the awards. Like, that is like what I just feel like I'm so blessed for having that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, Brendan, I know we're coming up on time, but I want to be respectful of yours. I'm going to wrap with just some quick rapid fire questions.
Sure, man. Hit me up.
Favorite city you traveled to as a result of swimming?
Favorite city, Indianapolis.
Really? Not even something global? I love it.
I mean, if you're going global, but if you're saying city here, I would say
Indianapolis, okay.
I'm gonna say Indianapolis. It's just it's a sleeper, man. It's a
Yeah.
good city.
Yeah. Favorite Olympian that's not a swimmer?
Usain Bolt.
Favorite Olympian that is a swimmer?
Katie Ledecky.
Your favorite medal that you own?
My bronze medal from 2012.
2012. And this is also, you have the 2008 Michael Phelps gold medal, so that's really saying something.
Yeah. I mean, I have 6 Olympic medals, and that's the one that nobody touches. I love 100% them.
Yeah. And last question, the world record that means most to you?
2006. I'm in Canada. I break the world record in the 200 breaststroke. And the crowd, like, I had the entire Canadian crowd going nuts. It was pretty sick. It was an awesome race. And I just remember, I'll tell you this story real quick. That I had done an entire like 2-page or 3-page spread for Sports Illustrated. And I was like, man, guys, I really appreciate you doing this. Like, I can't believe you're going to do a whole feature on me. And they go, yeah, we're not going to run it unless you break a world record. And I was like, you just wasted 3 hours of my time. I was like, and then it's the little things and moments like just trigger me. And then I remember touching the wall and losing my mind, going like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be on 3 pages of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, Bren, you are my favorite Olympic athlete of all time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you making the time today. I think your story of just comeback after comeback after comeback, climbing the mountain hill, having that mindset change to be like, hey, I'm going to fill these other buckets, and ending with a cherry on top is so inspirational to me. And I'm so grateful for you for making the time today.
Yeah, man. It was a great time. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.